Tom Cruise didn't expect the hotel lobby to be this crowded. The press tour for his latest film had wrapped an hour earlier, and he had specifically asked his team to find him a quiet corner of downtown Boston. Not a luxury suite, just a room with some peace. But peace wasn't easy to come by when your face was known by every other person with a camera. He tugged his cap lower, pulled the collar of his jacket up, and waved off his assistant. Just need to take a walk. Alone. Tom, we've got the car downstairs. I said alone. His tone wasn't harsh. It was weary. He'd smiled and posed and answered the same questions with the same practiced poise for 6 straight hours. Now, all he wanted was 30 minutes of anonymity. He slipped through the side exit of the hotel and into the Boston dusk. The streets were damp from an earlier rain, and the city smelled of wet pavement and hot pretzels. Neon signs flickered overhead. He didn't know where he was walking. He never did on nights like this. That was the point. After 10 blocks, his stomach reminded him that dinner had never happened. He passed a few trendy restaurants, each with a wait list and front-facing windows filled with people who would recognize him instantly. Then he saw it. A small, quiet diner wedged between a laundromat and a bookstore. The sign above the door read, Elliot's Place, home cooking since 1952. The windows were foggy, the lighting soft. It looked untouched by time. Exactly what he needed. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside. No paparazzi. No agents. No flashbulbs. Just the low hum of old jazz and the clink of silverware on ceramic. A couple in their 70s shared a pie near the back. A college kid typed on a laptop. A waitress passed him a menu without looking up. Sit wherever you like, she said. He found a booth in the corner, ordered coffee, and finally, let himself breathe. That's when he saw her. At first, it was just the way she moved. There was a kind of grace in her step, despite the limp. A rhythm in how she wiped the counter. Circular, careful, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Her hair was silver now, pulled into a tight bun. Her back curved ever so slightly with age. But her eyes, those eyes. Tom's breath caught in his throat. He knew that face. It was older, weathered, but unmistakable. He leaned forward, trying to get a better look without being obvious. Could it be? Excuse me, he called gently, raising a hand. The woman looked up from the counter, adjusted her glasses, and walked over. Yes, can I help you? She asked kindly. Tom didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned her face again, and then it hit him like a freight train of memory. The apple slices with cinnamon on rainy afternoons. The bedtime stories, not from a book, but from memory. The lullaby in French. The way she used to hug him, one hand gently cradling the back of his head. Maria, he said, barely above a whisper. She blinked, confused. Then her face changed. Her eyes widened. A hand flew to her mouth. Thomas, she said, using the name only she and his mother ever used. Tom stood slowly. He didn't care that the diner had gone quiet. He didn't care that people were starting to notice. He walked around the table and embraced her. It wasn't a celebrity hug. It wasn't rehearsed or posed or forced. It was real. And when she hugged him back, she was trembling. My God, she whispered, tears already forming. Look at you. Tom stepped back just enough to see her face. You haven't changed, he lied. She laughed, that same warm laugh, and wiped her eyes. I've aged 3 lifetimes since I last saw you. You took care of me when my family was falling apart. You're the reason I know what kindness feels like. They sat in the booth together, and Maria explained everything. After leaving the Cruise household, she'd taken care of other families, raised other children, but none like him, she said. You were always dreaming, always building something, always trying to fly. Tom smiled sadly. I still am. She had retired in her 70s, but savings had run out. Her knees were bad. Medical bills piled up. Her daughter passed away. Her apartment rent had doubled. Now, at 85, she worked the morning shift at a local school cafeteria and the evening shift here, 6 days a week. Tom was silent for a long time. Then he looked her in the eyes. You're not going back to work tomorrow. Maria's expression tensed. Don't be silly. I have rent. I'm serious, he said gently. And I'm not offering charity. I owe you everything. She shook her head. No, you don't. I do, he said. And you're going to let me repay that debt. In full. Maria's hands trembled on the table. Tom reached over and took them into his. Let me help you now, like you helped me then. The waitress brought their food, but neither of them touched it. Because in that little booth, in that quiet diner, something had shifted. Tom Cruise, the Hollywood legend, the icon, the daredevil, had found something he hadn't even known he was looking for. A part of his past, a piece of his heart, and he wasn't going to let her go again. The next morning, Maria didn't show up for her shift at the diner. Not because she had quit. She hadn't. Not yet. But because Tom Cruise had made sure of something else. He'd waited outside her small apartment at 7 a.m. sharp, his car idling quietly on the street. When she emerged with her apron tucked into her handbag and her knees already bracing for another day of pain, she froze at the sight of him leaning against the black SUV. Tom, she said, surprised. What are you? You're not working today. She opened her mouth to object, but he gently raised a hand. I know you think this is about pity. It's not. I'm not here to save you, Maria. I'm here because there's unfinished business between us. She exhaled slowly and glanced down the street. You really shouldn't be here. What if someone sees? I hope they do, Tom said with a half smile. Maybe it's time the world sees who helped raise me. There was silence. Then he opened the door of the car. Get in. I want to show you something. Maria hesitated. Then, with a small shake of her head and a smile she couldn't suppress, she slid into the passenger seat. As the car pulled into traffic, she glanced at him. Where are we going? You'll see. She let out a soft laugh. You haven't changed one bit. Tom turned toward her. That's not true. He paused. I used to think I made myself into the man I am. But now I realize that's not the full story. You were there when I was just bones and imagination. When my mother was barely holding it together. When I didn't understand what it meant to be safe. Maria didn't speak, but her hand gently found his on the gear shift. She gave it a small squeeze. 30 minutes later, the car pulled into a gated property on the edge of the city. It was quiet, tucked behind tall oaks, with ivy-covered stone walls and a winding brick path that led toward a two-story cottage surrounded by gardens. Maria looked out the window, her brow furrowed. Where are we? Tom stepped out and opened her door. This, he said, is yours. She stared at him, frozen. What? This house, he repeated. It's yours, Maria. She blinked hard. Tom, I don't understand. You don't have to work anymore, he said, voice soft but certain. No more dawn shifts. No more aching feet. No more scrubbing counters while teenagers scroll on their phones. You gave me stability when my world was chaos. You were my anchor when I had no map. This is me, finally, giving you something that lasts. Maria shook her head. I can't accept this. You can, he said gently. And you will. Not for you. For me. She looked at him sharply. What does that mean? It means this isn't a favor, he said. It's a promise being fulfilled. One I made when I was 6 years old. Do you remember what you told me the night my father left? She looked away. He waited. Then, almost a whisper, she said, I told you that someday someone would build a life where kindness was the cornerstone. He nodded. And I promised you I'd be that someone. Maria's hands trembled as she stepped out of the car. He took her arm and helped her up the garden path. Every step she took, her shoulders seemed to drop just a little, as if she were placing burdens down, one by one, after carrying them for decades. Inside, the cottage smelled like fresh linen and cedar. The fireplace crackled softly. There were bookshelves full of poetry and vintage cookbooks. A piano sat in the corner, dustless and tuned. Maria walked slowly through the space, touching the back of a chair, trailing her fingers along the counter. And then, in the kitchen, she saw it. A small frame on the windowsill. Inside, a photo, her and Tom, 20-something years ago. She was holding a plate of cookies. He was 10, with a missing tooth and a mischievous grin. Taped beside it, a drawing. A rocket ship. Crayon on paper. The kind only a child could draw. It read, to Maria. Someday, I'll take you to the stars. Thomas. She reached out and touched the edge of the frame with shaking hands. You remembered, she whispered. I never forgot, Tom replied. She turned to him, her eyes wet. This is too much. No, he said, voice steady. This is exactly enough. They stood there for a long moment. No words, just silence and history and a deep, shared reverence. Then she asked quietly, "What now?" Tom smiled. "Now, we get you settled. And then, if you're willing, I'd like you to help me with something else." "What?" He looked at her. "My daughter's lost her way. She's smart, maybe too smart. But she doesn't trust easily. I think you might be the one who can reach her." Maria smiled through her tears. "I raised one cruise," she said. "I suppose I can try for two." They both laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was the kind of laugh that softens the ribs and untangles old knots. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. For the first time in years, Maria Vega wasn't working. She was resting and dreaming again. 2 weeks passed. Not quickly, not in a blur, but slowly, gently, like the way sun rises on the coast, taking its time to warm the sea. Maria Vega adjusted to her new life, one teacup at a time. At first, she refused to sleep in the bedroom, said it felt too grand, too unfamiliar. But by the third night, when Tom's daughter Lily came by to paint with her in the sunroom, something shifted. Maria started leaving her slippers by the bed instead of the door. She lit a candle in the window each evening, a habit from her old home. It wasn't for herself. It was for the past. A small flame for everyone she'd lost, for everything that had almost broken her, but didn't. Tom noticed it the first night. He'd driven past the house after a late shoot downtown. It was just a flicker, that soft glow behind the curtain. But it stayed with him. She was home. He didn't call her that night, though he wanted to. He just smiled and drove on. The next morning, he arrived just after breakfast with 2 cups of coffee and a sealed envelope. Maria raised an eyebrow. "This looks serious." Tom laughed. "It's not. Or maybe it is." She opened it slowly, her fingers still used to caution after so many years. Inside was a flyer, printed on thick paper, like something from a university. At the top, it read, "The Foundation for Unsung Heroes of Childhood." And just beneath it, "Founded by Maria Vega and Thomas Cruz Maypother IV." Her hand stopped moving. She stared at it. She began. "What is this?" Tom stepped closer. "It's a real foundation, with real funds, and a real mission. We're building something big. We want to find the people like you, Maria. The quiet giants. The ones who raised the future but were forgotten in the process." He paused. "You'll be the face of it." Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. "Yes," he replied. "But I'm no one. You are the reason I became who I am," he said, his voice firm but tender. "And I'm not the only one. There are thousands of Toms out there. Kids who survived and thrived because someone like you showed up and stayed, even when it was hard." She sat down, hands shaking slightly. Tom knelt beside her. "You once told me that a good caregiver leaves before the child notices the weight being carried. But I noticed. I always noticed." He pulled a small book from his coat pocket, worn, leather-bound, full of folded pages. "My first journal," he said. "The first time I wrote in here, I was 9. It was after you stayed up all night because I had a fever. I didn't write about the pain. I wrote about you. I called you the light in the hallway. Because every time I opened my eyes, I saw you sitting there." Maria's voice was barely audible. "I remember. This foundation, it's your hallway light, Maria. It's your legacy. You lit the path for me. Let's light it for others." That afternoon, Tom took her to the Foundation's first office space, a cozy, converted library in Westwood. Nothing fancy, but the walls were lined with photos of caregivers, teachers, elder nannies, and aides. At the center wall, one portrait hung already. It was her, Maria Vega, age 85, standing beside a garden gate. The same look in her eyes she'd had the first time Tom told her his dreams of acting. Firm, skeptical, and quietly hopeful. A brass plate below it read, "The one who never left, even after she was forced to." Maria reached out, touched the frame, and whispered, "My mother would have cried." "She wouldn't be the only one," Tom said. And then he placed something else in her hands. Another envelope. Inside, a plane ticket. "To where?" she asked. "To Veracruz," Tom said. "There's a woman there named Julia. She raised a kid who now runs a school for orphans. She's 82, and she's living alone. I want you to meet her. I want her to know she matters too." Maria looked up, tears in her eyes. "I don't speak much Spanish anymore." "You'll remember," he said. "Just like you remembered the lullaby you used to hum when I had nightmares." Her smile broke then, big, full, and unguarded. "I never thought I'd matter," she said quietly. Tom stepped back, as if to give her space to own the moment. "But you always did," he said. "You just forgot for a little while." That night, the candle in Maria's window burned brighter than ever. But this time, it wasn't a flame of morning. It was a torch, and it had just been passed forward. It was a quiet Wednesday when Maria asked to see the old house again. Not Tom's home, not the guest house, but the real one. The place she had once stood at the back staircase, ironing shirts while Tom rehearsed lines in the mirror. The place where she once made eggs just the way he liked, before school and before the chaos. Tom hesitated at first. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. "I need to remember what I left behind," she said, "before I start building something new." So, that afternoon, they drove out to the countryside estate. It had been sold long ago, of course, renovated by a family from overseas who didn't know a single name in the mail they kept throwing out. But Tom still had access, one of those quiet celebrity favors that didn't require asking twice. They arrived just before sunset. The gate creaked open like it still remembered her. Maria stepped out of the car slowly, cane in hand, and stared up at the place. It looked taller now. Or maybe her bones just remembered how big it had always felt from below. "The trees," she said softly. "They're still here." Tom nodded. "They trimmed them, but I asked the owners to keep them." She walked ahead without another word. Past the gravel driveway, past the wide porch, and into the heart of the home that once knew her scent so well. Inside, the air had changed, less warmth, more polish. The wood was darker, the windows larger. But the bones were the same. She stopped at the base of the stairs. "I used to keep a bowl of oranges right there," she whispered. Tom said nothing. He knew some silences were sacred. "And here," she said, stepping into what used to be the sunroom, "is where you broke your front tooth. Running too fast. You were chasing nothing. Just joy." Tom smiled. "You were the only one who didn't yell. I gave you ice cream," she said, half smiling. "Then you started crying harder." They walked on, room by room. And then, they came to the room. Tom paused outside the door. "You remember?" he asked. Maria's face stiffened. The room had once been hers. Back when she stayed in the house overnight. Before she started taking the bus home. Before she was told, politely but coldly, that live-in help wasn't necessary anymore. She reached for the doorknob. It turned easily. Inside, the wallpaper was different. The bed gone. A bookshelf now sat where her dresser used to be. But on the windowsill, tiny grooves in the wood remained. Marks she used to make counting down the days to send money back to her mother in Veracruz. "You know what I remember?" she said. Tom shook his head. "That first winter here. I cried every night. Not for sadness. For disbelief. That I had come so far from my own mother's little kitchen to this place. To this job. To you." She turned to him now. "You were a wild child, Tom. And I was a quiet woman. But somehow you trusted me. You listened to my stories. You believed me when I said your dreams weren't stupid. I didn't believe many people back then," Tom said. "But I believed you." She stepped closer to the window and pressed her hand to the cold glass. "I never said goodbye to this room," she whispered. And for the first time in years, Tom saw tears in her eyes that didn't come from pain, but from memory, from gratitude. From something far deeper than he could touch. He walked to her, and quietly, gently, he said, "Then say it now." Maria closed her eyes, touched her fingers to the windowsill one last time, and whispered, "Thank you for holding me when I had no one." That night, back at the guest house, she lit the candle again. But this time, she added something beside it. An orange. Perfect. Unpeeled. Like a memory left on the staircase, waiting to be found. The next morning, Tom Cruise did something he rarely did. He cooked. Nothing fancy. Just grilled fish, steamed vegetables, and a touch of lime. Exactly the kind of meal Maria used to make him during those long summer shoots when he came home too tired to speak. She stepped into the kitchen, surprised. "Did your chef fall ill?" she teased. Tom grinned. I thought I'd try something new. Or rather, something old. Maria sat down slowly, watching him plate the food. His movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial. Smells like Veracruz, she said softly. That's the goal. They ate in near silence, the kind that feels warm, not awkward. Halfway through, Tom looked up. I want to host a dinner, he said. Not here. Somewhere special. One night only. Just you, me, and the people who've meant something to both of us. Maria raised an eyebrow. You mean a party? Not a party, Tom clarified. A thank you. A bridge. To what? To what comes next? Maria didn't answer right away. Instead, she pushed a piece of fish around her plate and asked, Who are these people? Tom leaned back. A few I've worked with who still remember your tamales. An old driver who always asked about you. And someone from back then, someone who maybe owes you an apology. Maria froze. Her eyes didn't lift. Eliza? Tom nodded. Maria's lips tightened. Eliza had been his stepmother. The one who decided Maria was no longer necessary. The one who, with a single conversation, had ended the most stable chapter of Maria's life. I don't want drama, Tom, she said. You won't get any. She humiliated me. She regrets it. Maria looked skeptical. Tom leaned forward. She wrote me last year. Said she couldn't sleep some nights because she remembered the look in your eyes when she asked you not to return. She was young, scared, trying to be the woman of the house. And she made the worst kind of mistake, one she knew the second she made it. Maria's gaze softened, but only slightly. I'm not sure I need her apology. Maybe not, but I think she needs to give it. They sat there for a while longer. The sunlight moved slowly across the tiled floor. Finally, Maria spoke. If we do this, I want it to be about everyone, not just me. It will be, Tom promised. It'll be about the people who built the foundation of who I became. My first mentors. My quiet heroes. Maria tilted her head. You really believe we shaped you? Tom didn't hesitate. More than any director. More than any role. That night, Tom made the calls. A chef was flown in from Oaxaca. The private villa was secured. And one by one, the invitations were sent, handwritten by Tom himself, sealed with a red wax stamp. And on the envelope addressed to Eliza, he added just one line at the bottom. This time, listen. The next week would change everything. Not just for Maria, but for Tom Cruise. Because in honoring her past, he would be forced to confront his own. 3 days before the dinner, the villa began to transform. A team of designers brought in warm yellow lights, hand-carved wooden chairs, linen tablecloth from a small village in Chiapas, Maria's childhood town. Tom had remembered. He made sure every detail whispered of her, not of Hollywood. Maria stood in the doorway of the dining hall that afternoon, her eyes wide. Tomas, she whispered. This is too much. Tom stood beside her, arms crossed, watching the way her fingers traced the pattern on the fabric. No, this is just right. But there was one thing he hadn't told her. One name missing from the guest list. His own father. Back in 1981, Maria had held him the night his father left. Held him while his mother wept in the next room, while Tom, barely 18, stared at the door as if it would open again. Maria had whispered. He left his own reflection behind. Now you get to build your own. It stuck with him more than anything his father ever said. He hadn't seen the man in over 30 years. But the night before the dinner, he got a call. It wasn't from his father. It was from his father's wife. He heard about the event, she said, voice brittle. He wants to come. Tom stared at the wall for a long time. No. He says it's time. It's too late. But then something happened. He walked into the kitchen and found Maria rinsing vegetables. She was humming. Tom watched her for a full minute. How do you forgive someone who didn't ask for it? He asked, voice quiet. Maria turned. Her eyes met his. You forgive them because you deserve peace. Not because they do. Tom walked away. The dinner arrived. 15 guests. Long table. Flowers that smelled like home. And Maria, dressed in the same maroon shawl she wore the night she met his mother. There was laughter. Tears. Someone read aloud one of Tom's childhood letters. He had written it at age 9, telling Maria he wanted to become a superhero in real life. And then came Eliza. She stood, trembling. I said something to you decades ago that took 2 seconds to say, she began. But it followed you for a lifetime. I was insecure, threatened, and I tried to erase you from a life you helped build. I was wrong. Maria sat very still, then nodded. Once. Nothing more. But that was enough. The night wore on like magic, until a car pulled up outside. Tom's assistant whispered in his ear, "He's here." Tom stood, walked outside. And there, in the moonlight, was the man who left. His father looked older, smaller, holding his hat in both hands like it might protect him. "I wasn't invited," he said. Tom nodded. "I'm not here to cause anything. I just wanted to say, you became everything I never did. And that's not a failure, son. That's a miracle." Tom looked back at the villa, at the lights, the people, the woman who raised him, then turned to his father. "You were never the foundation," Tom said. "But tonight, you can sit in the audience." He opened the door and let him inside. The moment Tom's father stepped into the villa, the air shifted. Some guests stiffened. Eliza's glass froze mid-sip. Maria just blinked slowly. Not in fear, not in anger, but with the weight of time. Tom guided his father to a seat, not at the main table, but near the corner, beside the musicians. No introduction, no announcement, just presence. And somehow that was enough. Dinner resumed. But the warmth was quieter now, softer, like a fire still glowing after someone stirred the ashes. Then came the moment that no one had planned. Maria stood up. Tom froze. This hadn't been discussed. "I'd like to say something," she said gently, her accent folding into every word like silk stitched into memory. "I came to this country with 2 suitcases, a little bit of English, and 1 photo. A boy, with a gap-toothed grin, drawing spaceships with crayons. That boy is now a man who taught the world to dream in motion." She paused. Tom looked down, jaw tight. "I was called a nanny, a maid, sometimes a burden. But Tomas, he called me his constant. He made me feel like I belonged, even when the world reminded me I didn't." Her voice grew quieter. "And tonight, I want to say this publicly, so it's never forgotten. Every table, every stage, every trophy, he carried me with him. And now I see, I carried him too." A tear rolled down Tom's cheek. Then Maria turned, not to Tom, but to his father. "You left," she said. The room froze. But because you left, he had to become his own compass. And maybe that's what made him so brave. Tom's father lowered his head. "You don't owe me words," he said. "But I owe you mine." The silence was louder than thunder. "I never knew how to raise a son who wasn't afraid to feel. You did that. You raised the better man." Maria nodded once. "Then maybe we both did our part." Later that night, after the last guest had gone, Tom and Maria sat outside, a blanket over their knees. He held the photo she had kept, him, age 9, arms around her, smile wide. "You saved me more than once," he said. Maria leaned her head against his shoulder. "You were always worth saving." Above them, stars filled the sky, and for the first time in years, Tom didn't feel like he was chasing them. He felt like he was finally under them. Home. The next morning, Tom didn't speak to anyone. Not his assistant. Not his manager. Not even Eliza. Instead, he walked out of the villa barefoot, car keys in hand, and drove without direction. For almost 2 hours he let the California coastline pass beside him, thinking not of films, premieres, or rehearsals, but of Maria's hands. Wrinkled now, but once steady as they tucked in a frightened little boy on his first night away from home. His destination wasn't planned. It was remembered. The house on El Camino. His childhood home, now faded, gated, and barely standing. The paint had peeled. The porch had cracked. The gate creaked when he pushed it open. But the swing? The swing was still there. Same rope. Same plank. And sitting on it, as if pulled by memory, was Maria. She didn't flinch when he approached. "How'd you know I'd come here?" Tom asked quietly. "Because this is where you always went when you were lost," she said, not looking at him. "Even when you were 10. He sat beside her. The rope groaned. Silence passed. Not uncomfortable, just full. "I want to do something for you," Tom said finally. Maria gave a tired smile. "You've already done more than I ever dreamed." "No," he said. "Not out of guilt. Not as a gift." He pulled something from his jacket. A folder, Inside, architectural sketches. "See this?" he said, pointing to a two-story building shaded by trees. "It's yours. A home. Not a house, not a room. A place where you can do anything. Host, rest, garden, even teach." Maria's eyes narrowed. "Teach?" Tom nodded. "I've started a foundation. For children without homes. Without direction. Without someone like you. And what would I do?" He looked at her. "You do what you did for me." She stared at the folder. "This isn't about saving me," she whispered. Tom shook his head. "No, it's about honoring you." Maria didn't cry. She didn't hug him. She simply reached out, took his hand, and gave it a squeeze that said everything. "I will help," she said, "but only if I can plant sunflowers in the front yard." Tom smiled. "Deal." By the time construction began on the house, word had gotten out. Not to the press, Tom had made sure of that, but to the people who needed to know. Architects, legal teams, contractors, and, most importantly, Maria's family. Her great-niece, her former neighbors, the pastor from the church she used to clean every Sunday. They all called, or wrote, or showed up one by one. The message was always the same. We never forgot her. We just didn't know where she went. And now, Tom was making sure the world would know. "Everything okay?" Eliza asked as she brought him coffee one afternoon. Tom sat on the edge of the construction site. Behind him, beams rose where the new foundation had been poured. Ahead, Maria and a group of children from a local shelter were sketching in the dirt, mapping out what flowers would grow where. "Yeah," Tom said. "I'm just watching." Eliza handed him the mug and sat beside him. "You've worked on movie sets for decades," she said. "But I've never seen you care this much about getting something perfect." Tom didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, "When I was 8, I used to hide scripts under my pillow. Not because I wanted to memorize lines, but because Maria said stories protect us, even when we sleep." Eliza smiled. "I think this is your real movie," she said. Tom looked at the children again. One was holding Maria's hand. Another had his head on her lap. "No," Tom said. "This is hers." The house on El Camino was set to be called the Vega Home, a name Tom insisted on. It would be a permanent sanctuary for retired caretakers and struggling children, working together to rebuild not just their lives, but each other's self-worth. But Maria had one condition. "I don't want this to be about charity," she told him. "Make it a trade. A partnership." Tom agreed. Each resident would contribute in their own way: cooking, reading, mentoring, storytelling. It wasn't a favor. It was a purpose. That night, Tom sat down at his desk. He opened his notebook and wrote one line. "This isn't a story about a star. It's a story about the woman who raised one." Tom didn't plan to speak to the media. Not at first. The Vega home was a deeply personal project, something born out of loyalty, love, and overdue gratitude. He didn't want flashing cameras muddying the silence Maria had fought so hard to maintain for decades. But Maria had other ideas. "You want this to matter?" she told him one evening, rocking gently on the porch of the temporary home he'd built for her beside the construction site. "Then stop hiding. Say her name out loud." Tom looked down. "Your name?" "No," she said. "Every name like mine. Every forgotten one." So, a week later, Tom Cruise walked onto the set of a late-night interview show, not to promote a film, but to tell the world a story. The host had expected the usual charm, a few jokes, maybe a tease of a future Mission Impossible sequel. Instead, Tom began with a photo. "This is Maria Vega," he said, holding it up. "She was my nanny, my protector, my first teacher. And until last year, she was scrubbing diner floors at 85. The studio went silent. Tom told them about her sacrifices, about the drawings she'd kept in a shoebox, about the way she taught him to use his imagination when he felt powerless. He told them about her hospital visit, her refusal to accept pity, and the truth she had hidden even from his mother. "She never asked for anything," Tom said, "and that's exactly why she deserves everything." It wasn't a monologue, it was a confession, a public apology, a challenge. By the time he finished, the entire room was on their feet. Backstage, producers begged him to announce the foundation. A documentary, a partnership with a major charity. But Tom just shook his head. "This one isn't for profit," he said. "It's for Maria. And Maria, watching from her quiet room that night, wearing the same sweater she had in the cafe, just smiled. "You were always a good actor," she whispered to herself. "But now, you're finally telling the truth." After the interview aired, the world changed overnight. Not for Tom, for Maria. The next morning, the mailbox outside her temporary bungalow was overflowing. Letters from people she'd never met. Single mothers, teachers, grandmothers, young men who grew up with no one but a neighbor who made them soup when their parents disappeared. They all said the same thing. "I had a Maria too." Some sent drawings, like the ones Tom used to make. Others sent poems. One child from New Jersey sent her $2.83 in coins and a note that read, "You can have this for your garden." Tom was stunned. "You're a national symbol now," he told her, kneeling beside her as she opened the letters, her hands trembling less each day. Maria chuckled. "You make it sound like I got elected." "In a way," he said. "You did." But not all letters were sweet. One envelope had no return address. Inside, a yellowed photograph. 2 boys. One of them unmistakably Tom, maybe 6 years old. The other was older, maybe 10, with the same dark eyes, same jawline, same defiance. Maria stared at it for a long time before she spoke. "I was hoping this part would never come," she said. Tom frowned. "Who is he?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, walked to the window. Her breath fogged the glass. For a moment, she looked every bit her 86 years. "He's your brother," she said softly. "Your half-brother." Tom's world tilted. "What are you talking about?" Maria turned, the photo trembling in her hands. "Your father had another son. Before he married your mother. He left them behind. Never spoke of it again. But he came to me. Once. When you were 9. Tom couldn't breathe. And he just watched. From the diner window. Said he didn't want to ruin anything. But he asked me to keep you strong. Even if he couldn't be part of it." Tom took the photo, stared at the boy's face. "Where is he now?" Maria looked down. "I don't know, but I think it's time we find out." The truth, it seemed, wasn't finished revealing itself. The photograph sat between them on the table like a ghost neither of them had invited. Tom stared at the boy, his eyes, the jawline, even the stubborn set of the mouth. It was like looking into a mirror that had skipped time. "You're sure?" he asked. Maria didn't blink. "He was your father's son." Same smile, same eyes, and the same weight in his shoulders, like he already knew the world didn't owe him a thing. Tom nodded slowly. "And he just left?" "He said he didn't want to disrupt your life," Maria said. "Didn't want anything from your father. He only asked me to promise that you'd grow up knowing how to stand tall, even when no one else believed in you." Tom swallowed hard. "And you did." She smiled softly. "I tried." By nightfall, Tom had already put his team on the search. No media, no noise. Just private investigators, a scanned copy of the photograph, and a single mission. Find the man in this picture. He didn't know what he'd say when they found him, if they found him, but he had to try. 2 days passed, then a week. Maria returned to the Guardian Angels village, now hailed as its founding soul. Residents waved to her like she was royalty. Children stopped her in the garden to ask about the boy in the photo. She told them gently, "That's a story still being written." Tom returned to his film set, but worked shorter days. More present, more human. His co-stars noticed the change. "You're different lately," one of them said. Tom smiled. "Just remembering who made me." Late one evening, his investigator called. "We think we found him," the man said. "Name's Lucas. Lives in Montana. Works with his hands. Never used Cruz as a surname." Tom stared out the window. The Hollywood hills glowed beneath him, but his heart was 1,000 miles away. "Does he know who I am?" The investigator hesitated. "We're not sure, but he's seen the interview." Tom nodded. "Set it up." The next morning, Maria was waiting in the kitchen with 2 cups of tea. "You found him, didn't you?" she asked before he could speak. Tom nodded. Maria set the second cup down in front of him. "Then go. And don't bring your fame with you. Just your heart." He left that afternoon, the photograph tucked into his jacket pocket. It was time to finish a chapter that had been left blank for far too long. The roads of Montana were quiet. Endless stretches of golden prairie swept past the windows of Tom's rented pickup. No entourage, No security. Just him, the photo of a boy who might be his brother, and a promise he had made to Maria. He had practiced the words a dozen times in the mirror. But when he pulled into the gravel driveway of a modest house tucked behind a line of tall pine trees, all the rehearsed speeches vanished. A man was standing outside, fixing a fence post. He looked up as Tom stepped out of the truck. There was a long pause. "You're Tom Cruise," the man said, as if tasting the name to confirm it was real. "I am," Tom replied. The man dusted off his hands and came closer. "Lucas," he said, extending a hand. "Didn't expect this." Tom shook it. "I didn't expect to find you." They stood in silence for a moment. "I think we should talk," Tom said. Lucas nodded. "I figured this might come someday." Inside, the home was simple: wood-paneled walls, shelves filled with tools and old books, and a single photograph of a woman in a nurse's uniform. "My mother," Lucas said, following Tom's gaze. "She passed 2 years ago." Tom took out the photograph Maria had saved. He handed it to Lucas. Lucas looked down at it slowly, then sank into a chair. "God," he whispered. "That was taken at Maria's place. I forgot she even had that camera." "She kept it," Tom said. "All these years." Lucas ran his thumb along the photo's edge. "She told me not to come looking. Said you had a chance at something big. Didn't want me getting in the way of that." Tom sat across from him. "You weren't in the way," he said. "You were part of the story. I just didn't know." Lucas looked up, eyes glassy. "I watched every movie you made. Every interview. I knew who you were. But I didn't want anything. Just wanted to know you were okay. And now," Lucas shrugged, "I guess I still don't want anything. Except maybe, to finally say hello." Tom smiled, eyes stinging. "Hello, Lucas." They talked for hours. About their father, his silence, his flaws, his absence. About Maria, how she had raised each of them differently, but with the same unwavering love. And when Tom finally stood to leave, he didn't offer money or promises of grandeur. Just a hug. The kind that belongs to brothers who waited too long to find each other. That night, as he flew back to Los Angeles, Tom looked out the plane window and whispered Maria's name. He knew what he had to do. 2 weeks later, standing beneath a white canopy on the opening day of Guardian Angels Village's second campus, Tom stepped up to the microphone. Maria sat in the front row, holding Lucia's hand. "I want to tell you about the woman who saved my life twice," he said. "And about the brother I never knew I had, until she reminded me that family isn't something you find. It's something you return to." The crowd rose in applause. Maria wiped a tear from her cheek and smiled. The story was whole now, and it would live on, not in movies, but in lives changed, hearts healed, and a village built by the hands of angels.